Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to another amazing pod, Late Night with Chefs, Truffle Boy and Doug reporting for duty. But Doug had a little surprise. His parents flew in. He's opening a restaurant, so he's gonna make it in spirit, and he's gonna be tuning in from Florida. We are super excited to introduce our next guest chef. He's coming from Toronto, Canada. Chef Ron McKinlay, and he's also the chef de cuisine at Canoe Restaurant. Correct, chef?
Yeah,
How are you
that's
doing
that's the one. You
today?
got it right. You got it right. Yeah, I'm good, mate. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, we're super excited to learn a little bit more about you, kind of where you started your culinary journey. So if you could, start us off, what were those early years like in culinary? What inspired you, to become a chef and chase this as a career?
Um, my early years in culinary. So I've got a kind of a roundabout way of getting involved, but I guess it all started in the kitchen with my mom when I was a kid. I was, I was a chubby little kid, and I was always eating, and I was always getting stuck in the kitchen and getting in trouble, and I just loved food. I couldn't get enough of it, hence why I was probably a little chubby kid. But um, so there was always something there. I didn't know anyone that was in the hospitality industry or in that career path, so it never really dawned on me to take it as a career
Mhm.
when I was young. Um, and then I guess fast forward a little bit, I kind of went through high school, and I played sports, and school was never really my thing. And then when I finished high school, I didn't really know what the hell to do. So my parents kind of thought it might be a good idea to look at chefing as a thing. Now, bear in mind, this is what is this? I graduated high school, so this is like 98, 99. There was no real rock star chefs at that time. I think like at that point, I think Emeril Lagasse was on the Food Network, and I thought he was pretty cool. Like there wasn't they weren't what it is today. It wasn't a rock star scene. So I took their advice, went to culinary school, didn't like it, didn't get it, none of it made sense. And then yeah, from there I didn't really fall into cooking yet. I went overseas. I played some rugby overseas and kind of forgot about cooking for a while. And then fast forward a few years later, I fell into cooking again, and just kind of from there decided to make a go of it. I was in my mid 20s at that point, and I needed to do something, and I needed to be good at something. I didn't want to be mediocre, so I just figured cooking was the route for that, and I went for it from there.
Awesome. And then kind of like as you were journeying through life and doing all sorts of different things in terms of like rugby, traveling the world, were you still, pursuing like eating, going out to restaurants? Were you still like intrigued by food? Were you still familiarizing yourself with it, or was it not really there?
Not as much as I should have. I think my travels later on in life, my travels and food made more sense what I was seeing, but at the time, I was very focused on playing sport, and that was it. And then same way when I fell into food, that just became my focus point. So from then on, when it was it for food, then because I started cooking a little bit later as well, I really focused. Like I read every book you could. I on my days off, I was, at the time I was going to the library looking up cookbooks because, it wasn't an Amazon back then to buy them all. So I
Right.
was
And then
reading about like Gordon.
what were
Go ahead.
those, yeah, what were those early cookbooks that, really built that foundation for you?
There was a few. The biggest one, and one I still get inspiration from, is definitely Michel Bras' first book. That one's crazy. I mean, there's still food in that book today. You could put it in a restaurant and get 2 stars from it. It's ridiculous, and it's over 20 years old. A lot of Gordon Ramsay's books back then were a big inspiration for me as well. Um, and Marco Pierre White had White Heat come out back then. That was pretty incredible. And at that time in North America, kitchens weren't cooking like that either. So these guys were kind of idolized, and that's kind of what made me take the step to move to the UK in the first place. So that's where I got the idea to move to the UK, from seeing those guys and what they were doing.
And so so you were born in Canada?
Yeah, I'm a Vancouver boy. I'm from the West Coast, so born and raised in just outside of Vancouver.
Awesome. And then, what are those some of those, staples that you grew up on that, here in America we would, you know, the difference, in terms of culture and stuff like that, but what was those early childhood staples that you remember, or you were, at least your
Yeah.
favorites?
I mean, they're probably, it's all mom's cooking, really. I mean, suburban favorites, really. Meatloaf, Sunday roast was definitely a big one. I love that. Every weekend we'd have some kind of Sunday roast, and even to this day, I wish my mom lived in the city because I'd like to sit down and have a roast every Sunday.
That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, stuff like that. Just my mom's cooking really growing up. I mean, it's not like we were going out to fancy restaurants or anything like that. I didn't have any idea of this world back then. So it was just kind of good home cooking, really.
And then so you traveled to UK, and then is that where your culinary journey, that's when you started taking things seriously?
Yeah, that's when it really all started to make sense as well. And that I got lucky enough to get a job in Edinburgh in Scotland for working for Tom Kitchen, and that's when I realized that cooking was a profession and it wasn't a joke. You couldn't you couldn't have a busy night and just go out and get on the piss and think you could be fine for service the next day. Like there, you were starting at 7 in the morning, finishing at 1 in the morning, and you were working hard. Like it wasn't a joke. I mean, that was the most stress I remember ever being under. And you either made it or you didn't, and it was very evident if you weren't going to make it very quickly. And without that experience, I definitely wouldn't be where I am right now at all.
And
Like
how did that
I guess, kind of.
opportunity, stumble into your lap? Were you kind of searching out for these restaurants, sending your resume, or just, right place, right time type of
Yeah.
thing?
No, I searched that one out for sure. There was a magazine publication back then called Hotel and Caterer, or the Caterer magazine, and it had like ones to watch. And he had just opened his restaurant like I think 3 or 4 months before that. And I was at the time living in the Channel Islands, just off the coast of France, in a small island called Guernsey. And I read this magazine, um, saw what he was doing, and I had always wanted to go to Edinburgh. I've got family lineage from there. I've always wanted to travel to Scotland. So I was reading the magazine, saw what he was doing. The next day, me and my boss at the time, we quit our jobs, drove across Europe for a month, and then when we took the ferry back over from Rotterdam to Hull, there was a bus going to Edinburgh. So my mate got in his car, he drove to London, I got in the bus, I ended up in Edinburgh, and then I ended up getting a stage at the kitchen. They couldn't hire anyone, so I just kept showing up for a month every day until someone got fired and a spot became available, and then I got hired, and then I was with them for almost 4 years.
Wow, what an incredible story. How was that first, first day to like the end of that month, in terms of like, were you, everything was completely new to you? Like, how did you
Everything.
take on the challenges? Was being somewhat in athletics and sports eased you into that, stressful, high pressure, quick thinking type of environment?
Yeah, I mean, playing at a decent level in sports does teach you, it teaches you how to take a bollocking properly and take criticism, like that's definitely something that would have helped. But everything there was new. I mean, even their terminology for certain things, you don't know what the hell they're talking about. I remember one time that he yelled at me to run in the fridge to grab the brambles, and so I just ran in the fridge. And then I realized once I was in the fridge, I didn't know what the hell a bramble was. So I just kind of hung out in there until someone else came in the fridge, and I was like, "What the hell's a bramble?" He's like, "It's a blackberry, you dick! Like, just grab him and go back out there. He's waiting for you." So little things like that was definitely a bit of a culture shock, but yeah, I learned everything. I mean, I remember rocking up to the stage. I had two knives, two global knives, and I thought I was a rock star, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And the
It's still a
first
good
job
start
was,
to start off with that. With that means you've done some research, right? I mean, that's Anthony Bourdain's go-to knives is that he recommends for any chef to start off with are the globals.
yeah, I know, but in a professional kitchen, it wasn't the right ones for that place, that's for sure. But yeah, I mean, everything from wrapping herbs properly and just kitchen etiquette, like just shut up and get it done, kind of thing. It was a hard kitchen, and but it was a good base of knowledge. And it's like I said, if I didn't work there for that amount of time, it wouldn't have given me um, like the strength of mind to keep going in this profession for sure.
And then so you got hired on as a commis, or what position did you kind of started off in,
You
and
know,
where did you end
back
up?
back in the day in that kitchen, there wasn't really any positions. You just showed up and you worked. And like, I mean, people kind of took on positions, and there was a more senior guy and a less senior guy, but we didn't actually have titles. We were just like, you're on a section. Like if you're on garde manger, or you're on the pastry, or you're on the sauce, you're cooking the fish, um, or you're cooking the veg. But we didn't have per se titles. But I would say, I mean, if you look at it that way, I would have definitely started out as a commie, and left as probably, I guess you could say, kind of like a junior sous. I was kind of, I'd done every section, and I was on the pass with the chef most nights. Um, yeah, but that was the Wild West back then in that kitchen. It was brutal. I loved it, but yeah, it was pretty
What
brutal.
were you guys working with? Like, French tops? Was it, brasserie, open fire, or?
Yeah, it was French tops. It was really classic. It was a tiny little kitchen. I mean, now he's built an empire, and it's completely changed. It's an amazing. I've been back a few times. But we had, what did we have in that kitchen? We had two French tops and a single like large gas burner for stocks, and that was and two drop down ovens, and that was it. Some fridge space under the benches, a walk-in fridge, um, and a big butcher's block, and that was about it. Like we didn't have much going on at all. There was
Wow.
there was a there was a sous vide machine, but there was no water bath, so we would just use it to pack things down. Like we weren't cooking sous vide back then at all. We were just cooking, everything in a pan and bang it in the oven, or old school long braises, or stocks ticking away overnight. There was no rationales or fancy ovens. There was nothing.
And kind of going back to, that earlier time, in terms of like just me being interested, since I wasn't quite yet in any chef role or anything like that to really see what was going on. But, in terms of sourcing and forging and being in a, fine dining environment, how was that, how did those relationships get built, especially in that restaurant? And
Well, he had a pretty good. I mean, like for instance, one of my mates in the kitchen, his dad was our gamekeeper. So his dad, Ronnie, would come in at 7 or 8 in the morning with a fresh kill from the fields, like about 2K away. So he'd come in with grouse, snipe, woodcock, teal, wood pigeon, hare, all shot that morning. We'd have fishmongers that would just drive up in a small van with the fresh catch of the day, and we would know what's coming in because they'd call the chef, or they'd call my chef Tom, just when they left the dock, so we'd know what they had. Everything was very small. We didn't have a lot of big suppliers. I mean, there's the big, the normal dry store suppliers and whatever, that's the big ones, but most of the suppliers are really small and really niche. So the stuff we were using was the best stuff you could get. I've never seen produce that's been that good ever.
that's amazing. And especially doing it, pre high tech internet speeds was pretty
Yeah, there
incredible.
was nothing. There was nothing. Everything was like, I mean, we had our knives, a spoon, some tongs and some towels and some pans. That was it. There was nothing. There was no gizmos or gadgets. That's for sure.
And then what were you guys, what was the cuisine of that kitchen, and what were you guys,
His biggest thing is, and it still is today, it's from nature to plate. So it's about taking Scottish produce, putting it on the plate as simply as possible, using the French techniques that he was trained in. So, I mean, we had a dish that, geez, I got to remember back now, but I think it was called haggis, neeps, and tatties. So it was like foie gras with pickled turnips and like this potato lattice, and this little like croquette made from haggis. Uh,
and
that
for
again, it
everybody
makes
who
it
doesn't
makes
know what
sense.
haggis is, like me, what is that, like a
So
wild
haggis is
bird?
delicious. No, haggis is delicious. It's a Scottish. I mean, you're not going to see it much outside of Scotland. It's a Scottish delicacy. So it's basically everything inside of a lamb: the heart, the lungs, the liver, the kidneys, all cooked inside of its stomach. It's kind of like a meatloaf, kind of.
Got it.
Just
But just with all the innards. It's
all the good stuff.
like
Yeah, and it's
blood
delicious.
pudding almost.
It's to that extent. Yeah, you use all the weird bits and you make it taste good.
Nice.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
and that's, that's amazing that they were utilizing, whole concepts and everything that, kind of today you can categorize as like modern, nose to tail cooking and farm to table cooking, and
Yeah.
that's all been already happening at, these fine dining establishments.
Well, I mean, that was, and that kind of cooking has been around for years and years and years. I think just people just got, away from it because it's a lot of hard work and you got to know what you're doing to pull it off. So, but I think there's people learning that now that needs to come back a little bit. But yeah, back then that was in the UK it was more common, but definitely not in North America.
Yeah. So 4 years there you worked, and then what was the next adventure?
After that it was Australia for me. So I was pushing 30, and at that time you could get a visa if you're a Canadian if you're under 30 to go over there and work. So made sense. I got the visa relatively easily, and I just bought a ticket and moved to Melbourne.
And was there any chefs or restaurants that, were drawing you there, or was this just, where life was taking you?
Yeah, so my flatmate in Edinburgh was an Aussie, and he told me about some really cool chefs doing some interesting things in Melbourne and Sydney. So I knew there was a food scene um, uh, up and coming, definitely. And I decided to go to Melbourne because there was a few places there that I liked the look of. There was a chef named Andrew McConnell that was making a name for himself, and he's a legend there now. And I ended up, as soon as I arrived, I got a job with a chef who'd just done a stint with Michel Bras in France. So there was definitely a lot of. I think it's similar to how in New York and Chicago, a lot of guys go away and come back, and they bring back what they learned overseas, and that was happening in Melbourne when I got there. So it was a pretty cool time to be there for sure. And that was around 2000 and 2010.
And, in terms of culture difference, food, differences, what were, some of those biggest changes? Because you're kind of, evolving your own style as you're hitting all these, new culinary experiences.
Yeah, for sure. The Australian palate is definitely different than the Scottish palate. So I went from, the Scottish palate, everything's heavy, it's always cold and miserable there. And the palate there is, like I said, it's heavier, more denser foods. And you move to Australia and there, everything's a little bit more delicate, lighter, and there's a lot more Asian touches to the food there as well. So
And,
that it was a big learning curve for me in that regard again, because it's a lot of stuff that I hadn't worked with either. So it was a good learning curve um, to go through.
and then what was dinner service like? How many covers were you guys doing back then in terms of, like a busy Saturday night?
So that first restaurant I went to, I didn't actually stay there that long. Well, it wasn't a good fit for me. But two of the guys in that kitchen that I met, who are some of my best friends now. One is Adam Liston, who runs a place in Adelaide, and the other one, Matty Forbes, is one of the best pastry chefs I've ever seen. He's got his own bakery in Melbourne. Matty got me on to the opening crew of Gordon Ramsay, who was opening a restaurant in Melbourne. So I jumped ship and I was part of the opening team there. And that place, we were doing, I would say about 120, 130 covers a night.
That's busy. What
It was
kind of
busy.
crew did you guys, start off with? And
We had a bigger brigade there. It was a bit of a line system, one that I hadn't really seen before. So, God, looking back, I was so in the shit when I was there. I'm trying to remember. I'd say we would run a service with probably 12 to 15 people, plus a few on pastry.
yeah, no, definitely. And
Yeah,
then it was
it was a proper line.
chef's tasting menu or a la carte or kind of both.
They had it was kind of, the menu was derived so you could kind of choose your own tasting menu. So it was split into like 5 or 6 sections, and each section had a few choices.
Hmm.
So I mean, really cool from the customer's point of view, and it made the kitchen, every table was like a tasting menu, but slightly different. So
Slightly different, yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it was a cool idea. It didn't really work, but if it was finessed a little bit more, it could have been really, really, really successful, I think.
And did you get, the pleasures of working with Gordon Ramsay side by side, or?
No, at that point he was a businessman, so he was down there for the opening, and he came
Mhm.
through the kitchen, and he's got his energy about him. he's a beast when he walks. He's a big man. I don't know if anyone's ever actually seen like this guy, but like he's a beast. He's like 6'3", solid 200 pounds. Like he's a big boy.
Yeah.
But he was an absolute gentleman when he came to the kitchen. He was lovely. He was nice to be around, and he just sent everyone buzzing. So, but like I said, at that point, he was a businessman. He wasn't in the kitchen. He was there for the TV crews and whatnot. So we didn't work so much side by side.
Got it. And what was some of the biggest takeaways that you got, working out under that kitchen and under, those chefs that, he must have selected himself, right?
Yeah, he did. I mean, Josh Emmett was the executive chef there, and he'd worked for him for over 10 years. And a couple of the other guys came from New York that were working for his place there. So that kitchen had a lot of really strong chefs. I mean, there's a couple there now. Jamie, who's running Fiskebar in Copenhagen, my mate Emil, who's got his own place in Randwick there in Sydney. Yeah, that team was strong. I think the biggest takeaway I had from there, and I've said this before, and it doesn't sound like it's a positive, but I mean, for me professionally, it's a positive, is they were cooking, I guess, more British food, and they were cooking it for the Australian palate. And I don't think the Australian palate understood it or appreciated it. So I don't think it was a good fit for the clientele.
Mm-hmm.
But then, that's something that, chefs need to learn as well, right? You're not cooking for yourself.
Right. It's a fine balance, right, of how much creativity you input and then where you kind of lose your guests and lose the whole point of the experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to cook for yourself, what you like, right? But on the other side of the plate, you gotta keep the punters happy too.
So
yeah.
Australia treating you well? Were you after working at Gordon Ramsay's spot? What was kind of the next stepping stone in the career?
Yeah, so after that, I was only there. The visa system there, you can only work for 6 months for an employer unless you get sponsored. So I was there for that amount of time, and then I jumped around a couple kitchens, and I ended up getting a sponsorship and working for a chef who's to this day one of my biggest mentors and a friend, Scotty Pickett. So I ended up again starting from scratch, starting as a commie CDP in a small place called Estelle with Scott. He was the head chef and owner. And I ended up staying with him for over 4 years through 2 restaurants, Estelle, and then I helped them open another place that's now shut called St. Crispin's. And that place, we got best restaurant of the year. And Australia has a hat system as opposed to Michelin star system, so they have 1, 2, or 3 hats. So we're pretty lucky. We got best new restaurant and then 2 hats within the first 6 months. It was a crazy time.
How did you guys party that one?
That was, you know what, we were so bloody busy that we didn't really celebrate it as much as we probably should have. Like, yeah, because we had to open the doors the next day after the awards ceremony, so it wasn't as rock and roll as it probably should have been. That's for sure.
It's pretty interesting. But they do they have Michelin now, or they're still just
No.
On the hat rating?
Yeah, they have the Good Food Guide and they have the hat system, but Michelin hasn't gone to Australia yet. I can't see it going there. I don't think it will. But there's definitely restaurants there that warrant 2 or 3 stars for sure. There's some of the food scene in Australia is just going from strength to strength right now. It's just getting better.
And is it very was this restaurant located in a city or, kind of more rural farm like farm to table concept?
No, it was in the city. It was just outside of the Melbourne city center. So it was pretty, yeah, it was just slightly on the outskirts of the city. So it was still pretty close. Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome. What was, did you have any kind of looking back, any $1 million bites that you were like, this dish is perfect. Like, I can't believe never would have thought about these combinations, kind of where you were really, excited about this dish that you guys put on the menu?
There was a dish that he used to do. It was a tartare dish. It was just he did a cool thing with tartare where he always cured the meat first, so he didn't serve it quite raw. So it was always cured first, and that's something that I do a lot now too. But we used to get this Wagyu Brizola that used to come in, and he added it to that with a beetroot and red currant puree, and then like shaved Tasmanian truffles, and it was like ridiculous. Like you'd almost order, you'd almost hope you over prep a little bit that night so there's some left over so you can snack on it at the end of service, because that was just ridiculous. And Tasmanian truffles are incredible. They're very, very good.
That's the first I hear. Where are they actually coming from in terms of
So from Tasmania. So they're Tasmania is a smaller island off the coast of Australia, but the truffles coming out of there, because I think the conditions for truffles there is perfect. It's not warm. It has pretty rough winters, and the terrain's pretty rugged. So they grow some amazing truffles, and the stuff. I mean, we got them pretty fresh, right? It wasn't far for the truffles to travel. You get French or Spanish or Croatian truffles here and there. They've had to take some time in transit, but that stuff was just picked and straight to our door.
right? So
So
your shelf life
it's pretty
is
crazy.
much longer on that as well, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, the just the aromats that come off of it are that much stronger.
Wow, that's I gotta put that one on my bucket list because it's the first I hear of that. We usually in Chicago here getting from Umbria, Italy, that's flown in directly. But other than that, it's pretty hard to source anything France, and anything other than that is gonna be super high priced in terms of like bringing it into your restaurant, having it as a
Yeah,
supplement.
the Tassie ones, if you can get a hold of them, you should try them. They're definitely worth a go.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited and they have the same seasons, so they'll have like your summer, your winter, your spring, more or less.
Ah, God, I'm trying to remember back now. I think they just had. I just remember it just being the winter Tassies, if I'm right. I could be wrong. Someone's gonna send me a message and call me an idiot, but I just remember getting Tassie truffles in, and I can't even remember what time of year it was. Um, but they were stunning. Yeah. So I don't remember there being summer truffles from Tasmania, but I mean, there could be now. I don't know.
Right. No, that's very interesting, and then just shows how much you learn just by like traveling around and just kind of taking in that culture, and really being able to move around. But like you did stick around, for 4 years here, 4 years here. What were some of those things that I think a lot of chefs find it hard after that, like 1 year mark where you're comfortable, but like you're still
Mm.
not being able to give your input, as much as you'd like. What were some of those things, and how did you deal with that when you were trying to get a little bit more recognition, a little bit more say, after kind of putting in
Yeah,
your time?
I think a lot of young chefs need to realize that it's a catchphrase, but it's a marathon, not a race, right? If you're in such a rush to do these things, you need to take a step back. And the chefs that I picked to work under, and I was lucky enough to work under, I held in such high regard that I didn't feel the need to put my opinions or my ideas onto their food, because I was still learning every day from them. I was no rush to be the person running the kitchen when I already knew the person that running it on top of me was still someone I could learn from. So if you find yourself after a year questioning the chef you're working under, I think it's time for you to change. Like you gotta work under someone that you have no doubt that what they're saying or what they're doing is stuff that you're still learning from. When you stop that learning and you think it's time for you to put stuff on the menu, you either take that step up in another position or you find someone else to work for. And I was lucky, the guys that I chose to work for, I was with them for a long time because I had a lot to learn. And I knew that. So I was in no rush to jump the gun.
And then in terms of learning, what are we talking about? What were some of those fundamental techniques that you learned, and skills in management that really are defining your cuisine today?
I think skills and management is stuff that I'm learning more and more now than I was back then. But I think with them and with anything I learned from them was just repetition, doing it again and again and again, and being faster and faster and faster. And I was lucky in both those kitchens. They were both very much uh, whole animal kitchens. So we would get everything in and we utilize every aspect. So we would always, get whole lambs or whole rabbits, or in Australia, we'd get like kangaroo legs coming in, or wallabies, and learning how to use all that kind of stuff, or whole birds and aging the birds and ducks and all this stuff. So there was there was always something going on, and some old school skill or technique that I wanted to learn and keep learning until I got like super comfortable with it. So there was always something I was kind of being fanatical about and wanted to get better and better. So
Yeah, I think
um,
that definitely extends your experience when you are getting these whole animals, because I'll say a lot of restaurants in Chicago that I've worked with, we don't get a bird with feathers and all, because
mhm.
it's just too much to kind of process in house. It's a lot even to scale a fish inside a restaurant. If you don't have like a fish room, it's a lot of extra cleanup that you need to do, that a lot of chefs opt in to get from the fish supplier already scaled or gutted, or already fillets or whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, but that's sometimes it's a smarter move financially as well, because you don't want to pay the labor for someone to fillet a fish when it can be done for you, which I understand. But I think you just have to, when you're writing the menu, there has to be a fine line between how much of that you get done and how much of that you still use in the kitchen. Because anything, especially on the protein side and meat side, that we get in whole, it's because I want to get it in, because I want to use all the other bits that we're using and we're cleaning up, and all the trim, all the like the pig's ears and the snouts and the trotters and all that kind of stuff. We get it in whole because we want to use all that stuff. And ordering that stuff is hard. You can't just it's hard to go down to your meat guy and say, hey, I want to order like a pig snout. Like, it's hard, but you can get a pig's head. It's easier. So
But
that's
with
that's kind of
with
why we do
with
that.
that, do you find yourself like, because a pig only has 2 ears and one snout, like, is that something that's going on the menu? Is that like a VIP special, kind of going out that night? Is that just for learning experience, like R&D family
Well,
meal?
that depends. That depends, and that's where you have to be smart with what you're doing. I mean, we can get a couple pig trotters in, but like, am I going to get 7 portions out of one, or am I going to serve it whole? Like, those are the questions you have to ask before you do it, and that's why it's interesting getting it in, because that's what that's why younger kids need to learn is not every cut is exactly the same. There's always something else you can do with it.
Yeah, no, definitely. I love everything I've been hearing, in terms of, bringing in the whole animals. I think that's, for anybody who's really hungry, that's definitely going to keep and give them a little bit more skin in the game, because they are learning and they're putting themselves through, those more difficult tasks. Then, portioning, once you have a fillet and once you've, kind of broken things down, it's much easier. But when you have the whole animal, you sometimes have to go with a saw or something like that, and that kind of brings that, I don't know, that rawness back into the kitchen. And I think it builds a strong foundation for chefs that are able to bring that down the line.
Yeah, it does. And I mean, I wish we could do more whole animals than we do already, but like, at the end of the day, we still have to do, we have to be able to use it smartly on a menu too. So we do it as much as we can to be feasible, but at any time, if we can get it in whole, we will for sure.
And then with using like all the innards and stuff like that, when I see all the chef TV celebrity shows, and they show all the innards and livers and stuff like that, you'll have the chefs kind of like smidge on that. How did you get acquainted to that? Did you always kind of have a taste for like liver and hearts and the offals, or did that kind of grow on you, and like you learned like with different
I think it,
techniques and
it, it grows on
applications?
it grows on you when someone shows you how to make it that knows what they're doing, and you realize the flavor you can get from it.
And in
Because I
terms
think
of, yeah, definitely.
when you're putting that stuff like the livers and the kidneys, when you're putting that in a farce to make a sausage, or to to do choux farci, or like stuffed cabbage and things like that, without those kidneys, it's not the same. It's not as good. Like, you don't need to know that it's in there, but when it is in there, the flavor is incredible, and it also gives a texture, and it's a mouth feel. It changes everything. So it's not using it for wow factor and to be cool, but it's using it because it literally makes what's on the plate taste better.
No, for sure, and it definitely probably brings in a lot of nutritional value that people have been missing out on, in terms of just the different mineralities and the different organs that we
Yeah,
have, right? So
it would do, and also, you're already paying for it, so you kind of, from a financial standpoint, you need to figure out a way to use it to make money too, right?
yeah, I've been are those little pies that you guys make, or is that, like a pate force
Oh,
meat or something?
Petiviers, the Petiviers. That's pigeon breast with stuff with foie gras, and then wrapped around it is like a chicken mousseline. Um, and then on the side of that, which is in some of the photos, but on the side of that, we take the hearts and livers from the bird, and we make a little sausage, and then we stuff that inside the leg, and then serve that on the side. So again, nothing goes to waste, and then the carcass goes into making the sauce, and um, yeah, there's no wastage, and
Yeah,
it
that
just makes
sounds
it
like a
delicious.
lot of prep time to go into
It's a fair
that.
bit of work. Yeah, yeah, it is a bit of work, but it's something that attracts staff. They want to learn how to make it, and it's something that people, especially in North America, don't see that kind of technique that much here. So um, it gets people's attention as well, and it tastes good.
No, it looks delicious. I mean, you guys have to check out Chef's Instagram. It's completely foodie paradise. It's gonna make you drool. I'm excited. I haven't been to Canada yet, but when I make up there, I'll definitely come and visit you. But as we kind of get back
Yeah.
to the timeline, after Australia, what brought you back to Toronto, Canada?
Um, Long story short, so after Australia, I'd actually agreed to open up a restaurant in Paris, and that fell through.
Okay.
Long story short, because of some visa issues. They couldn't get a visa in time, and so I ended up moving back to Vancouver, back home, and I wasn't ready to stay at home yet, and I got a job in the Middle East. So I went out to the Middle East for just over a year, um, and then the Middle East was a humbling experience. It was great in many ways, but a year was enough for me. And then I came back home again to Vancouver, hung out with my family a little bit because obviously I've been overseas for a long time. I don't get to see them a lot. And then this job came up at Canoe, and my my boss, the district exec over here, John Horn, we had a phone call. We both got on really well on the phone call. He said, like, look, we'll fly you out, spend a couple days here, see how you like it, cook some food for us, and that was it. I came over, did it, got the job, and then yeah, here I am 4 years later, still there.
Wow, I just, for me it's so hard to stay in one spot, that when I hear another chef kind of having these, and a lot of chefs that are really good at their game and have a lot of accolades do really have that long periods of times where they're really able to, um you know you've been there so long that you are inputting your own personal self right into that restaurant,
Hmm.
because I
Hmm.
mean you're there for 4 years, right? I mean that's an incredible amount of time, and how many people you've trained and how many people went through the kitchens and how many different menus you've done. I mean that's incredible.
Yeah, it's been a. I mean, Canoe's a bit of a special place. It's the longest running fine dining restaurant in Canada, unless I'm wrong. And I think in its 26 years, it's only had. I think I'm the fifth head chef. So I mean, they keep people at the helm for quite a long time, and for good reason. I mean, it offers a lot. It's a pretty special place. It sits on the 54th floor, overlooking the whole city. Um, we got a nice big kitchen, and I mean, we're busy. We work like maniacs, but it also gives us something to look forward to coming to every day. So yeah, it's a nice place. So definitely, if you're up here at any time, let me know, and we'll get you sorted and get you to come in
Oh,
for a feed.
100%. I would
Yeah.
super excited. I'm actually interested. I don't know if you've ever seen this Netflix show, or it might not be on Netflix at all, but it's called The Wild Chef, and it's a Canadian chef in Quebec who just like uses an absurd amount of foie gras and everything.
Oh, Martin Picard, I think. Martin Picard, a big heavy guy, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He uses a. No, you're right. It's an absurd amount of foie gras, but he's a legend. He's very famous here, and he knows what he's doing. He's very talented.
Yeah, I just love that he's just got that vibe to him. Like he doesn't, he's the person that cooks for himself, and then he's like, if you guys want to enjoy it, enjoy it. But I'm gonna keep
Yeah,
doing
but
this.
everything he cooks is delicious. It's just, I mean, you can eat it once and you have to, you have to take a few days off, right? Like
Yeah.
it's full on.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's a beast for sure, that guy.
Have you ever gotten to go out to any of his spots, or is he more just he's a little bit too far out for you?
No, he's out. One of his main places is based in Montreal. Montreal is about a 5.5 hour drive from here. It's not that far, or like a 45-minute flight. I have eaten at one of them, and it was delicious. It's decadent. Excuse me. It's decadent and very rich. You need to have a nap after you eat there, but it's definitely it's an experience, and one that you should try if you're ever in Montreal. Montreal is an amazing place. It's like being in Europe. It's very cool, and the food scene there is incredible.
Oh no, I've been watching it. Canada's been doing. I mean, you guys have been doing a lot of things. It's just hard to get a lot of the material that you guys are doing here in the States in terms of like what we have available to us from what we see. In terms of
Hmm.
what's influencing us in the industry. You guys been doing a lot of things. In terms of like going Montreal or Quebec and Toronto, the weather change, and does that really have a big significance on the way you guys look at cuisine and what you guys are able to source?
Sourcing wise, we've got some pretty good suppliers in Canada. So I mean, even sourcing for me at Canoe, we source stuff from coast to coast to get what we need here. So we have some amazing suppliers that help us with that. Um, I mean, you will see slight differences. I think if you eat in Vancouver or if you eat in Toronto, definitely if you eat in Montreal, they have their own food scene completely. It's a very European vibe there. Um, Weather wise, I mean, our weather's pretty similar to Quebec. Vancouver just rains every day, pretty much. And there's a massive Asian influence in Vancouver. They've got some incredible Chinese and Japanese and Korean food there. Some of the best I've ever had. Um, and then Toronto is just a mix. We have like you name the culture, we have it in Toronto. It's incredible. Like to go out and eat in Toronto, you can have everything from like the best like jerk chicken or Caribbean food you've ever had to great Indian food, Mexican food, Chinese, Japanese, like Greek. Like Toronto has every ethnicity you can think of doing something at a very very high level. It's pretty fun city to be in.
Are you a fan of Drake by any chance?
I think by default I'm supposed to be, but I mean he's all right. It's not really my thing, but I remember when he was making a big splash here back in the day, but I was overseas at that point, so I think I missed the show.
Missed the climb up on that. No,
Yeah, yeah.
definitely. Well, what do you like in terms of music? What's your vibe?
I like old school hip hop.
Old school hip
Always,
hop.
always have. Like in the '90s, especially that's when I was a teenager and I was listening to all that stuff. And I still love all that old school hip hop and R&B for sure.
Nice, awesome. Is there any like Canadian old school hip hop you like, or that's not really a thing?
No, I mean it definitely is. Like God, who's way back in the day? Old school Toronto hip hop would be like Maestro Fresh West and stuff like that. I don't know if you know who he is. Maybe a little bit
I do
too
not,
old
but
for
I'll
you, but
definitely take a look into it.
yeah, you should, man. He's wicked. Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, especially in Toronto, had a pretty cool hip hop scene back in the day. But I was stuck in Vancouver back then. But yeah, there's some cool tunes from that. But I love that era of music for sure. I mean, even in '90s, um, there was good rock music and that too. All that grunge stuff was pretty stellar.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm glad to hear. I'm too. I like old and new hip hop, but definitely in that category. I think it gives you a little bit of relief hearing a little how other people are stressing out in their life, and you can kind of relate to that. I think, especially being in the industry. We have a old buddy of mine tuning in, Ramon, and he's asking, what are some of the core skills that you've learned throughout your experiences?
Core skills.
Like,
I
I
think
think what makes a great chef, right? If that, or I guess you could keep it
what
to
makes a
core
great chef.
skills.
I mean, what makes a great chef? Jesus, I don't know.
Like what are
I
those
think I
core
think
skills that you saw from your mentors, with all the experiences that really shaped you, right? Because you know that saying, you're only as good as your five closest friends, or five mentors, or whatever kind of reference. What were those kind of things that you took away from them that?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest things that I learned in the guys I worked under was that their grasp of classical French cuisine and doing the basics properly and not cutting corners were things that I took with me and I still do. And I think that those are the best things. If you don't know, if you don't know where you came from, you're not going to figure out where you're going, right? So depending on what kind of cuisine you want to go down, you need to learn where it came from, learn those basics well, and learn it from someone that knows what they're doing. And that's you need a solid foundation, and don't be in a rush to learn it either. If it's going to take you 5 or 10 years, let it take you 5 or 10 years, because it's all well and good being a head chef when you're 22, but you're not going to be any better when you're 29 or 30, are you? Like you gotta slow down a little bit and learn, not be in such a rush.
Yeah, I mean, I love what you're saying. It is really hard though, especially just like I was thinking back when I was like, 18, 19, 20, trying to, be the next sous chef and kind of like fighting for that position. But I think you're exactly right, because I think I missed a lot of key, skills or techniques, or maybe interactions that I could have had my head been focused on, becoming the best line cook at that time, and not like trying to move up and get that name on the jacket. Because once you get it, you realize that it really doesn't mean anything if you don't have that foundation, if you have those, values and
Well, no, and if you're then at that point, and you're supposed to then teach people underneath you, you can't teach them because you don't know, and it just keeps that horrible cycle going, right?
yeah, 100%. I've definitely had to swim or sink a couple moments in my career, but I was able to manage and put through. I like always trying to see, you know I look at my career as like I've never really failed any big, which means like I haven't really pushed too hard. So I'm always like trying to
Hmm.
see where am I gonna like really fail, or like stumble in terms of kitchens. And I mean, so far it's been good. Obviously you have your weaker days, and you mess up on things, which is completely fine as long as you own up to your mistakes, and you tell chef and you go about it the right way. um
Well, the sooner you tell them, the better, right?
right.
Like
any
you're gonna get
any
yelled at either way. It doesn't matter. But what you're gonna get yelled at a lot worse if it's a lot closer to service.
Do you have any like moments like that where like I've heard stories of like dropping a 24 quart of veal jus down the stairs, and
Oh,
uh
I've had my fair share. I remember we were in the shade at work, and this is in Edinburgh. And I'd come around from the dish area holding a bunch of things, and one of them was a massive Le Creuset pot. And most of the kitchen equipment that we were working on was bought from Pierre Kaufman's old restaurant in London, Le Temps Clair. So all these pots and pans had been used by Gordon Ramsay and Marco Pierre White and like all these famous chefs. And I came around the corner, running around the corner because I was in the shit, and Tom's pregnant wife came around the corner at the same time. So I just had to stop in my tracks, and I dropped it and I broke it. And that was a bad day. That wasn't a fun experience.
yeah, no, I could definitely imagine the gut drop feeling there.
That was horrible. And he didn't even say anything. He just, yeah, he just looked at me, and I was just like, "Fuck, like this is bad.
Well,
Sorry, chef."
that's awesome. Is there any books you've read lately, or what are those kind of knowledge seeking spots that you go for, in terms like to reference recipes, to come up with new ideas, keep being inspired?
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite books is David Kinch's book from Manresa. That one I look at a lot. I love that one. I'd say there's an old book from a few years ago now by Tom Akins that was really good. Pascal Barbeau's book from L'Astrance is pretty cool. And then we have some Canadian guys too, like Stéphane Modat has a couple books that's all about Canadian cuisine. There's a book written by a famous French restaurant in Montreal called Tokay. That's incredible and incredibly underrated. The the French food that they're doing there with all completely local Quebecois and Montreal ingredients is crazy. And for me, trying to cook Canadian food, that's like an encyclopedia for me. So that's another really cool one. But yeah, I read a lot of books. I have a pretty big collection. I think it's a good thing for, I mean, I don't think chefs should read a book and think they can do it. They need to work in the right kitchen and learn from the right people. But, you know, reading a book and learning something and getting questions that they can ask or want to learn because they've seen something in a book, I think that's the right reason to get your head buried and just learn and read and as much as you can and ask as much as you can.
Yeah, no, I've definitely always loved growing my cookbook chef collection. So I'll be definitely checking out those. Super interested in, actually, I don't have any cookbooks, you know, in terms of like Canadian fare and you know, with all those different, you know, influences that you guys do have there, which is pretty incredible. I'm definitely gonna be checking a lot of that out, referencing you know, those books that you
Yeah, they're great.
mentioned. In terms of, you know, what's your what was kind of the COVID pivot? What was that like? How was that going through?
I mean, it's still a thing for us. We're still not open yet.
Okay,
We
though,
hopefully
that's
now,
some new.
yeah, we're I think the longest city in, well, definitely in North America that has been shut, if not the world. We've been shut for over 300 and some odd days now.
Wow.
Um, Patios just started to open up a couple weeks ago, so we're gunning for mid to end July that we can finally open up with limited seating in restaurants in Toronto. So yeah, it's changed everything. I mean, my brigade went from roughly, you know, 6 or 7 sous chefs and about 25 cooks to me and 2 sous chefs. That's it. So, and it's just putting food in boxes and doing little kits for home cooking. Which, you know, it has its creative aspects and you have to think completely differently. But at the end of the day, you're putting food in a box when you want to be putting it on a plate. So um, it's been
And you guys are putting out
a
some beautiful,
different.
beautiful stuff. I mean, to for the you know, takeaway. I mean, what I saw was like, wow, this is like top of the top.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty lucky. The 2 guys that I have had with me for the most time, Des Murphy and Eric Valente, they've been with me for a good while at the restaurant, and they're amazingly talented cooks. So, you know, you're only as good as the guys you have beside you, and I've had them luckily for the whole time during COVID beside me, knocking out some stuff. So,
It's a
yeah,
well-oiled machine at this point.
yeah, they're great. They're great. They know what I want, and sometimes they know it better than I do. So, um, yeah, I'm really lucky to have those guys for sure.
That's awesome. So now you guys are kind of gearing up to like a full opening. You know, what's you guys gonna be doing a tasting menu? Is that what you guys always did?
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna roll it out slowly because I mean, everyone's gonna be a little bit green. I think we're gonna roll out for the first week or so, tasting menu only, and then slowly work on an a la carte on top of that, and then lunches are gonna come into play and private, you know, all the private dining room functions that we do, plus weddings and everything. I mean, Canoe's a beast of an operation, so once we start fully going again, it'll be yeah,
That's
pretty
awesome. And
nonstop.
then throughout, you know, COVID, did you guys have any hard times like supplying, you know, the takeaway boxes or, you know, some produce? Have you seen, you know, prices skyrocket like we, you know, well, like I've personally seen here in Chicago in terms of like produce and protein is like almost, you know, 40-50% up from where it was
Yeah,
pre-COVID.
but everything's a little bit more expensive, understandably. I mean, everywhere's short staffed, so they got to pay the smaller amount of staff that they have a little bit better, and prices need to go up, and it's an inevitable change. So hopefully the customers can understand that when we have to put our prices up a little bit. Um, Produce wise, getting it, we've been pretty lucky, but we've also written menus that are a little bit simpler because they're going to the home cook. So we weren't using elegant ingredients that are harder to get.
Hmm.
Now, in the next couple weeks, that might be a different story. I'm telling you, because now I have to start getting in some more, you know, like elk and bison and pigeon and foie gras and stuff like that. And I'm reaching out to my suppliers now and finding out where they're sitting on everything. And that might be another story. That might be a little bit harder to get stuff
Yeah.
moving forward. So you can
It's-
ask me that in 2 weeks, and I'll see where I'm at.
I'll follow up with a
Mhm.
little post, see where we're at. But yeah, that's definitely been the case. You know, here in Chicago they got the green flag to fully open everything, and you know the memes rolled out that restaurants aren't fully staffed to fully do full capacity, and bringing people back. The people that you had trained are gone. Maybe they're in different industries. So it's definitely been.
It's much the same here. It's much the same here. We've lost. I mean, I'm part of a restaurant group, and across the group, every single restaurant's struggling for staff, and it's spreading it thin. And I don't think it's just. I mean, it's a worldwide problem now. I've got friends in London and Edinburgh and Melbourne and Sydney, and everywhere's struggling. It's an issue for sure, and restaurants are having to, like, tightening up their hours of operation. Some restaurants aren't doing lunch services right now because they just can't do it, and people's expectations aren't lowering either. So
Yeah, if anything,
I think
they've
it's
gone
going to be
higher because
difficult.
they've been cooking with
They have.
chef's instructions at home.
Oh yeah, they're all chefs now. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I think the next while, I think everyone in this industry that's left is gonna have it's gonna be a lot of frustrating times. So hopefully everyone is realistic about that, and can come out better after it, because it's definitely been a hard year and a bit for hospitality.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I just saw Noma rolled out the Noma project, and they're gonna be doing, almost becoming like a full on institution and rolling out their own, like,
All the garums and
yeah,
stuff.
the
Yeah, I saw
Garums, and
that.
then that's pretty interesting. And you see Daniel Hum in Northbrook, New York, doing completely vegetarian
Vegan.
menu,
Yeah,
vegan,
plant-based.
plant-based menu.
Yeah.
I mean that's like huge in terms of like going through COVID and then just like putting that on top of yourself. So
Yeah, he's got some balls on him for sure.
I'm excited. I think everybody's really hungry to show what the world's been missing, what their cities have been missing, their inner communities of people who weren't able to go out and you know wine and dine, and that's our industry show, the hospitality. So super excited for Canada to be opening up. That's something that I don't even like usually consider or like think about, because we're all in our own little worlds most of the time, too busy to really see what's going on outside. But it's always nice to connect with chefs, and especially with so much experience and so much traveling, which I love. And I'm pretty jealous. I haven't done a lot of traveling yet, but I'll definitely be gearing into that, and definitely be checking out a lot of those spots that we all kind of look up to, and all want to dine in at.
Yeah, for sure. As soon as people can travel again, but I think that's going to happen pretty quickly now. But yeah, get the more you can see and the more you can eat. I mean, that's just how you should be, right? Like, that's fun.
Yeah, definitely. And then in terms of how people can find you and reach out to you, or do you guys do just like reservations online? You guys do right now? You're just doing patio. Everybody in Toronto.
Yeah, so I mean, we don't have a patio, but in terms of reservations, you can find us. Canoe has its own Instagram site as well. I mean, people can reach out to me, obviously, personally through Instagram. I try to get back to people, to most people, if the question's actually not crazy. There's some crazies out there for sure, but yeah, I mean, through our website. But our reservation lines aren't open yet because we're not sure when the government's going to allow us to open, but we're aiming for 2.5, 3 weeks from now. So when that does go live, yeah, our reservation lines will be open through website, telephone, and also through social media outlets. So yeah, that's Canoe Restaurant in Toronto, and then and my social, my Instagram as well.
Awesome. Well, it was a pleasure talking to you, getting to know, where your culinary journey started, and it was really exciting to see where it took you, and kind of full circle. You're back in Canada, a little bit different city, but it's still pretty awesome. All the experiences that you got to have, and all the chefs, and really what I love about this industry is that we all go, especially when we're talking in terms of like fine dining and like really trying to get that higher knowledge of like technique and stuff. It really comes down from history of like this chef worked with this chef and this chef and this chef and this chef, and then that we become part of that like lineage, which is really like awesome. That we grab all these years of knowledge that has been around. Starting off with the Escoffier to where we are today.
Hmm.
It's just like awesome to be a part of that, and it's awesome to hear your personal touches on that.
Yeah, thanks, man. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me and reaching out to get me on this. It's good to chat about some stuff because you forget some of the stuff you do sometimes until you actually talk about it. So
Yeah, it's
no, it's
definitely
been cool, man.
great to reflect. And then, like I said, guys, you have to check out his Instagram page. I mean, the food he's putting out is just incredible. Just the level of details, elegance, technique is just beyond. And I'm super excited that we got to have you on the pod. I'm gonna let you go. I heard you were just finishing up service, and you were so kind to give us a little bit of your time. So we really appreciate that, and we'll be in touch, showing lots of love.
Yeah, amazing. Thanks, mate. Pleasure.
Thank you. Everybody have a good
Cheers.
evening, and we'll catch you next week.